welcome back to the ReadySetGirl show. Today I'm here with Dia and we're talking about something very special and important that affects most of us, periods. And to help us talk about it, we have women's health expert and friend of the show, Malika, also known as HealthWithMali on Instagram. And she's going to help us understand how we feel about our periods as like female athletes and people who play sports and how it affects us in general. Yeah. Okay, we can maybe
Should we do the
start.
science or the memories?
Yeah, okay, why don't you start by telling us just like outlining the cycle in general so that we have like a good base to start at.
Yeah, okay. This is one of my favorite things to do.
Okay.
So, why don't you think of the sun and the moon?
Okay.
So, the male hormone cycle is like the sun.
Okay.
It rises and falls every day, clockwork.
Mm-hmm.
The female hormone cycle is like the moon phase, how it goes around 28 days. So, similarly, the female hormone cycle goes through phases, on average 28 days, but that depends person to person.
Oh my god, you've just blown my mind. I feel like that is like it explains so many like male and female comparisons just in life. Like it just makes so much sense.
The 9 to 5 was made for men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
we'll talk about it.
Like most things are. Yeah.
that comparison made me feel like I'm like in a war novel and I'm a warrior, like a beautiful princess warrior, and I'm completely primed for this conversation.
Yeah,
That's so like that. It just makes that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And then do you want to just take us through the different
Yeah, for sure.
phases?
So going back to the phases, you have two main reproductive hormones, estrogen and progesterone.
Yeah.
Estrogen mainly supports menstruation and ovulation, and progesterone makes you get ready for pregnancy. So whether you want to get pregnant or not, your body is trying to do that every month. So there are two main phases depending on which hormone is dominant. So your cycle starts with the first day of your period, and your period lasts, depends on again person to person, but say a week.
Yeah.
And in the first phase, that's when estrogen is dominant. That's why it's called the follicular phase. That phase goes on from the first day of your period until you ovulate. Ovulation usually happens midway through your cycle, and then progesterone is the dominant hormone in the luteal phase. So the luteal phase goes on from the day after you ovulate until until you get your next period.
Okay.
So you have follicular phase, luteal phase, estrogen is dominant, progesterone is dominant.
Okay.
And what hormone is dominant at a certain time in your cycle affects things like metabolism, performance metrics, brain changes, your mood. There are now studies coming out on how creativity changes across your cycle. So a lot of cool research is happening. I think there's still a lot for us to uncover, but in a little bite-sized packet, that is your cycle.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, amazing. Yeah, I feel like I know like the cycle and like our phases, but then when you're talking, I'm like, oh, I thought there was like 4 different things and not like it's also like convoluted. Even when you learn it in school, it's not really like
So a lot of like the cycle syncing stuff you see online is they'll talk about the uterine cycle. So they'll describe what is happening with your uterus, whereas what I was describing is the ovarian hormone cycle. So I was mainly focusing on the two main hormones.
Yeah.
The uterine cycle then describes the menstrual phase, so when you're bleeding, follicular phase, where your body is preparing to ovulate. Ovulatory phase is when you ovulate, and then luteal phase is when your uterus is preparing to get pregnant.
Yeah.
So again, there's so much online. People don't really, I feel like, explain things well, like what cycle they're talking about. But
Yeah. People don't explain things well. Also, like use a lot of jargon just to like seem smart and
Yeah.
you know like it's legit, which only just makes it more confusing and like harder to have access to the information.
I also like never heard it be termed as two separate things, like a hormone cycle versus a menstrual cycle, and that's just a completely new concept to me. But it makes so much more sense because then, like, how am I gauging my energy levels related to my menstrual cycle, related to my hormone cycle? And as you were saying, like, it's not necessarily, or I don't necessarily feel like information's being gate kept from us, but I feel like it's not being very specifically spoken about. So it's really easy to just like get it all jumbled in your head and not really fully get a grasp of what's going on. Yeah. So this is super helpful. So in terms of like the men and what hormones they have, how is that different? And if their hormones change every month or if they don't, how is that different from women?
So just talking about like the main hormones, like obviously men also have some female hormones, but their main hormone is testosterone.
Yeah.
And like I was saying earlier, it rises and falls every day. So they wake up, testosterone peaks, and throughout the day it'll fall. They go to sleep, wake up, it'll peak. So it doesn't really change month to month. Obviously, you have life stages as testosterone falls as they get older. Like for us, that would be estrogen. But day to day, it stays the same, whereas for us, it's month to month or cycle to cycle.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then between estrogen and progesterone, am I saying it?
Yeah.
Okay. Between estrogen and progesterone, what is it? Which one affects things like energy, things like metabolic rate?
Yeah. So they both affect everything. It just depends on which one is dominant. So going back to the phases, in your follicular phase when estrogen is dominant, that's when your body is essentially in a parasympathetic dominant state. So rest and digest. So you feel more calm and you feel like you can take on more stressful activities without getting frazzled. Obviously the follicular phase includes those days that you have your period, but if I could draw this, I could explain this better, but estrogen is slowly rising. So the first few days, estrogen may be low, but as your period gets over, estrogen starts to rise. So that window, your body is actually super primed to take on stress. A lot of people experience more perceived strength and energy. Your HRV is higher. Your RHR is lower, and because estrogen is dominant, you're also able to build muscle better.
This is so interesting because I do feel like that. Like at some points in the month, I feel like I'm a superhuman. Like I want to compete, I want to fight. I feel creatively like I could write 20 pages. Like anything is possible. And I feel honestly more motivated. Like nothing can bring me down as easily. But then there's some days of the month where that is not at all who I am. And I can't even like get myself out of bed. And it's really difficult to like mentally regulate me understanding myself when I don't have the language for it. So this is super interesting to know how these things affect me, not only in terms of like my body and the energy I have to expend, but also in terms of like where my mind is at or like what my focus levels are at.
Yeah, so when progesterone is dominant in the luteal phase, dominant progesterone affects, obviously your hormones affect your neurotransmitters. So the neurotransmitter GABA gets affected by progesterone, so you feel a little bit more, you want to kind of go into a shell, you may feel like certain emotional triggers are affecting you more. I get super emotional the week before my period, like anything will make me cry, and now because I'm more aware of my cycle, I can kind of like soothe myself and be like, I'm just emotional this week, like it's fine. Whereas earlier, I feel like I would get really affected by being that emotional, and I would like think something was wrong with me and like just go into this spiral. Whereas now I just kind of accept like I'm going through changes, like I'm gonna feel like this for a few days, then I'll get my period and then I'll be fine again.
Yeah.
No. So, I definitely feel that. I also feel like it's become so much more intense. Like last week I went to watch Lilo and Stitch, and I literally was like heaving, sobbing in the theater, spiraling about my dog dying. Like it was just like, and then like a few days ago I got my period and I was like, okay, like yes, but also like it was a great movie, but also, you know, I was definitely more triggered because of that. And it's nice to like have the explanation, but and like to almost prepare yourself for that, you know, that week before is gonna be like this, and I'm gonna like, you know, feel like everyone hates me, and you know, not like I feel like I hate everyone as well.
Yeah.
But then it's nice to almost have that explanation.
Yes.
I think it's also interesting because when I was younger and when I was playing sports, I don't think I experienced like this level, like the level I'm experiencing now of like moving between emotions and like having as strong a reaction to my hormones or my period or whatever it is as I am now. And I guess it just means I'm more primed to have a baby. But I definitely like feel it much more in my 20s than I did before.
Yeah, I think we're in our prime reproductive age. Our body is trying to get pregnant every single month. I also think there was just a lot more going on as kids, and like we were all just going through like high school stuff as well. So at least for me, I didn't really like dab into my emotions like that.
So this might sound so stupid, but when you're like, is there a limit to how much estrogen or progesterone your body can produce? And is there a way, like, are there like specific foods that make you produce more? If you exercise, do you end up producing like more testosterone, more estrogen? Like, how does your lifestyle habits regulate or change your hormone?
So obviously you have people who have hormonal imbalances, so that can happen. I would say things like stress, sleep, nutrition, overtraining affect that delicate balance of estrogen and progesterone the most. So in a nutshell, yes, your body can produce more estrogen at certain times, more testosterone at certain times. For example, I have PCOS, I'm estrogen dominant, and I have high androgen levels as well. That some people with PCOS have that. So yes, in a nutshell, yes. But for me personally, I try to use it as my superpower. Knowing that I have higher androgen levels means I can build muscle easier. So I use that as like a superpower. The more muscle I have, the less insulin resistant I will be, which will decrease or improve my PCOS symptoms. So I just try to shift the narrative in my mind.
That is so cool. Also, because I legitimately did not know that hormone health had an effect on like muscle production and like tissue regeneration, I'm guessing, which is, I wish that more athletes in like male and female knew that and had like a way in which we could integrate like knowing our body in this way with our like how we train.
Yeah, I think a lot of female athletes and like coaches are now tapping into female cycles. I know like the Chelsea women's football club and even the US national soccer team, they like talked about using their players' cycles to enhance training. And it also, I think, one, enhancing training, but two, preventing injuries, because there are certain times, so for example, the week before your period, your body's really inflamed, and that makes you more susceptible to like muscular injuries, injuries in your tendons, stuff like that. So I think using your cycle as a superpower is something like I really advocate for. I feel like more women should be tracking their symptoms, their cycles, just to be aware of like what you need to do to help yourself at certain times, and then what can you do to optimize your fitness at certain times.
Okay, so I'm wondering, do you guys remember the first time that you all got your periods?
Yes.
I vaguely
Do you want to share?
Yeah, I can start with mine. I got mine actually at a training camp, and I used to sail, so it was a water sport. And I didn't know what was happening. And I remember coming back and like seeing that I was stained. Also, for context, it was both genders and mostly male dominant. Almost, I think I could count the number of girls on like one hand. So I didn't really understand what was happening, but then I told my mom, and all the girls, including their moms, came to my room, and everyone was sitting outside the door, and there was, I think, one of my friends was in the bathroom with me, and she was teaching me how to like put on a pad, and like I don't know, like how to like what to, not to be freaked out by it. And it was really sweet because I feel like everyone came together, and I have such a clear memory of just like all the women in the room / bathroom and like their moms in the room / bathroom. And then my parents were like, you have to give everyone chocolates because it's like a big day for you. So they got me like this basket of chocolates, and it was around Diwali, so I started giving people, and then all the boys were like, why are you giving us chocolates? And I was like, happy Diwali, bro, because I like didn't want to explain it. So
wait, that's amazing. I love that your parents like told you to do that. That's so lovely.
It is a moment to celebrate, for sure.
It was really nice. And then I remember that for the rest of the camp, so the way it used to work was that, and I still don't know if any of the boys knew I got my period, because I was really just saying happy Diwali because I didn't want to get into it. But to launch the boat, you kind of have to go in the water a little bit, and so you start getting wet and stuff. And these things didn't really bother me that much, but it was like a little bit uncomfortable. So I remember all the girls would go launch my boat for me. And like everyone was just so supportive. It was really, really lovely.
That's sweet.
Yeah, I didn't even actually, when you said like it's a water sport, that's a whole other added element of like having your period while being an athlete, of like also like
getting wet.
and like in just like Indian culture, then having to be introduced like to use a tampon, which I feel like is generally like so taboo, like putting foreign objects out there.
Yeah, no, I remember like even, so that training camp, there was like a room and a bathroom. So it was nice. It was someone's like room. But where I was training from, I don't think, I mean, if I'm remembering correctly, but I don't think many women were in that like training center. So the female bathroom was like not it.
Seriously.
And so having to like deal with my period there was an experience. But I think it's like made me stronger.
I mean, I have so many like stories about like horrible bathroom conditions at meets and stuff. They just it's just not a thing that like people think is that kind of hygiene is needed, but it's actually such a deterrent. So many like girls quit because quit sport in general because you know of like the bathroom facilities. But what about you?
So I don't have like as distinctive a memory as you do, but I think I was expecting mine. I have an older sister, so I feel like I kind of knew like, oh, soon this will happen to me too. But I remember I got mine really early. I think I got mine at 11, like my first period, and then I didn't get regular cycles until I was like 12 and a half, 13. So I got like one and then nothing for like a year and a half. And when I got it, it was like very close to when my sister had got hers. So I was like, is something wrong with me? But I think my body was just like taking time to like adjust. But it was in school. I had to like go ask for a pad, and I was like in a younger grade, so they were like, what are you doing here? And then I was going to a friend's house after, so I remember I called my mom from school and I was like, hey, this has happened. Like, I still want to go to my friend's house, but like, I just got my period, I don't have like pads on me. So my mom called my friend's mom and was like, hey, can you keep pads ready for Malika? And I remember I didn't want to tell any of my friends because I was like the odd one out. So my friend's mom like took me to her bathroom, helped me, like she was like, here, you'll be fine, I won't tell anyone. So I didn't like celebrate, I was more like ashamed, I would say. And then eventually like I got regular cycles once like all of my friends had them.
I also remember getting, like mine is also similar, it's not much like of a story, but I distinctly remember getting it just, like I probably got it in training, and then I came home and I thought like maybe I like had rolled in mud or something like that. But I was like, Mom, like I don't know what's going on, and my mom was so excited, and I was like, oh my god, stop being weird. Like I like similar like to what you felt. Like I was just like ashamed. Like I didn't want like anyone to know. Yeah, but bless her, my mom was so excited, and I feel like looking back, like I wish I would have like shared that like moment with like my best friend who also trained with me, because she probably experienced the same thing and also probably got it in training, and then it was only something like we spoke about like so much later on, because again like you know we would go for meets together and the bathrooms would be so horrible that like it just made being on your period like while doing you know having to run just that much more difficult. But yeah.
Nice. Thank you for watching part 1.
Part 2 will be out on the channel later this week.